Okay, I'm Andy, CEO and founder of ipHaus, a turnkey prefab construction tech product focusing on providing novel, affordable housing solutions for difficult to build in spaces. We're been addressing, based on on-the-ground experience for the last couple of decades working in design and construction, industry that's been slow to change, introducing more efficient, environmentally and community-focused solutions. Saving 1.9 tons of CO2 emissions per build, and reducing 11.4 tons of waste per build, and tapping into under realized info lot market. The core of what we're addressing is really a lack of alignment across the entire design through construction value chain, resistance to integration of new construction tech, missed opportunity for recycling and upcycling of building parts, and addressing the inefficiencies of conventional construction, which are often too disruptive, slow, and complicated for building in dense urban areas. Make sure this sounds off. So our solution is ipHaus, a first of its kind multifamily building kit, focusing on difficult to build in spaces such as info lots, via a standardized panelization system, which allows for fast and easy assemblage. And our product is a software and hardware integrated platform with a digital toolkit which allows for input of site information, auto configuration of building structure and envelope, allowing for configuration of multiple lots at a fraction of the time. Included is interior space planning options, which are accessible online with supporting 3D visuals to better understand interior space planning and spatial qualities. The output is a 3D BIM model, which outputs structure, wall buildups, interior specs, and is generated for use of building submissions and manufacturing. Included also is a digital twin, which is accessible via mobile apps on site, helps to streamline coordination, double check design to construction, and is really addressing one of the common pain points within construction. Overall, the digital side of what we're doing really addresses and streamlines communication, project tracking, and construction coordination. The core of the building technology uses cold form steel, using 50% less steel than reinforced concrete, and following AISI standards to ensure full DOB compliance, as well as saving over 11.3 tons of potential landfill per build. We've been focusing on developing a system which is easy to adapt, requires no additional capital investment, and reduces the amount of labor needed on site, capital investment inside of GCs or builders. Our panels are designed to be upcycled and recycled. Sorry, I'm a bit out of sequence. Our panels are designed to be upcycled and recycled, during occupancy for interiors and post-occupancy after the building has reached obsolescence. Our total addressable market right now, sorry, my computer's a bit slow. I'll hold on for a second, okay. We're starting with New York, with the New York City info lot market, a $23 billion opportunity, with over 5,200 R5 to R7 zone lots available for development, with an average return of 300,000 per build. We're targeting completion of 150 builds within 5 years, with an ROI of 52 million and an average time frame of 18 months per build. We're slated to kick off our first pilot project build in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, third quarter of this year. We have a site secured or negotiating a joint venture with a landowner, and are bringing some additional investment vis-a-vis our current investors for construction financing, and also including some debt financing. Okay, got it. Overall, our strategy is to start focusing on New York, then expand through the US, and then eventually expanding globally. The core to what we've been doing in New York for the last couple of years is actually building a pretty strong network. We're a part of the New Lab Founders Fellowship cohort, which is supported by Bank of America, Mayor Adams' office, and New York City Economic Development Corporation. In addition to that, we've gone through 4 rounds of engineering panel mockups with our manufacturing partner and our prototyping partner, and have gone through vetting whether or not there are going to be any issues with the DOB submissions or in part of the city for what we're doing. as well as established supply chain collaborations or
And
relationships with
time
Hella,
is
Elmex,
up.
etc. Okay.
How much you guys raising?
We're like right now we have 250,000 pledge from New York Ventures. It's a matching pledge, meaning if we raise it, they'll match up to 250,000 of whatever else we raise. We're this round we're looking at raising a total of $1 million. We have 50,000 additional pledge from our initial investors. And we're looking to raise another 200,000 to minimum to match the New York Ventures pledge. And then from there, we'll look to raise an additional 500,000.
Everything was really interesting. It was a great pitch. You nailed everything. You were very technical, sometimes a little bit too technical, but just the one thing, I didn't feel a lot of passion. It seemed pretty monotonous. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I think it's like part of the thing that I'm not used to, which is 5-minute pitches.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really hard to be personable within 5 minutes. And I think the pitchathon thing, I'm way better at talking with EDC or Bank of America in a conference room for an hour than I am on Zoom. Nothing against pitchathons at all, but it's something I've done I think 2 times before or whatnot. So the lack of personality is personableness is probably me trying to cram everything in within 5 minutes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I mean, it's very interesting. Yeah, you want to take things away?
Yeah, just trying to understand what's your go-to-market. So, how are you finding the customers?
Yeah, our main go-to-market strategy is really the relationships we've been developing with real estate development brokers, with real estate developers. We've had ongoing conversations with Habitat for Humanity over the last year, and are looking at doing a pilot project with them. We're basically going to people that have access to land and looking at forming partnerships with them for development of land. The great thing about Habitat and like community land trusts that I've been talking to in New York is they get land for free oftentimes from the city. So that's a huge bonus. There's also I think the way real estate development works in general is, it's a very networked, complicated ecosystem. What we're trying to do is reduce the complexity from the construction and manufacturing side of things. And what we're trying to do is streamline our go-to-market strategy through being very aggressive about setting up, partnerships with people that have access to land that, see value in what we're doing. I would say overall, the last couple of years, the response has been really amazing. We weren't sure about what we're doing, how that was going to jive with New York, given prefab as well. There's no one in New York doing what we're doing right now. Most of the other prefab that's been realized has been volumetric, which is where you build out the whole room. What we're introducing is something that's really more along the lines of IKEA. It's flat pack, so it's way more efficient in terms of shipping. When you're shipping volumetric, when you're doing volumetric, you're shipping like 60 to 80% error. When you're doing flat pack, it's just way more efficient what you can cram into container. Or stack in a container. I think logistically too, in terms of set down space on site, and just like what we've been developing from the construction tech side, doesn't require cranes for assemblage. Can be use lightweight equipment like micro cranes and a lot of things lifted by hand. The other value add that we've been looking at is really starting from the question of why hasn't other prefab taken off in New York City? And why hasn't a lot of prefab taken off in the US in general? I think one of the things that we've found with a lot of companies is that they're focused on the technology side, but they're not focused on the implementation side, which is to say, if you're dealing with general contractors that are integrating in a new way of doing things, if it's way outside of their comfort zone or their wheelhouse, it's a non-starter, because it's just too much of a risk given the amount of capital investment required. If they have to, invest in new equipment or things like that, it's just not something that people are willing to do. So we've been really simplifying, but keeping the core value proposition of cost competitive. We're about 30% less than standard construction is right now. We're reducing the amount of people that need to be on site for builds. For 3-floor builds, that's 5 units. It's about 3,000 square feet. It's a team of 4 people that can assemble it in about a month, which is for New York is pretty amazing. So we've been really thinking through it holistically from conversations with other VCs that have looked at, construction tech startups. Their issue is like main issues are the price points and their go-to-market strategy that they haven't really thought through, how this is going to be received by real estate development groups or general contractors, et cetera.
My next question, I think you sort of partially answered it a couple of times, but so as a landowner or as a developer, what's my incentive in going for you just rather than a traditional build?
So speed would be one thing, and the other thing is, a lot of the infill lots, we were really surprised to find there's like over 570 million square feet of vacant land listed in New York's Pluto database. New York's really great at, finding information online about the city, about lots, et cetera. What we found is with a lot of the infill lots, they're 2,000 square feet. They're like, 19, 20 feet wide by 100 feet deep. They've been sitting empty for decades because the landowners don't know what to do with it. They don't want to deploy conventional construction because it's really complicated and super messy. If you do a conventional build, you're dealing with like 10, 20 different contractors. And for smaller builds, a lot of the contractors just want to get in and out. As there's not a lot of incentive. It's a smaller project, so there's not a huge margin. What we're doing is simplifying the whole design to manufacturing construction side of things, simplifying the whole sort of assemblage process, and providing solutions that allow for minimal disruption to local neighborhoods as construction is taking place. If you think about New York, I don't know if you all have been to New York or not, but if you go into Brooklyn or Queens or different places, you have really narrow residential streets. And you have like neighbors that are very sensitive to 2, 3 year long, 4 year long construction timeframes. From a lot of property owners or landowners, from their perspective, they're just like it's doing conventional builds is really not a big enough of a payoff. One of the market validations that we've had has been from real estate brokers like Marcus and Millichap and Madison State Sotheby's International. They have access to a lot of land they've been sitting on for a long time that they haven't been able to move. So if we can make this work, then it's something that they see a lot of value in. Coupled with the fact that New York has a huge housing crisis right now. They need like another 200,000 homes by 2025, which they're not going to hit that mark. Governor Hochul just attended a forum that was hosted by Jessica Katz, the head of New York City's building department. She was they're planning 800,000 homes in the next 10 years, which for New York I think is really ambitious. But the capabilities of what we can do from the manufacturing side, say we can do 150 home or multifamily builds, 3 floors or to 5 floors per year. And we're targeting 150 over 5 years to be a bit more on the conservative side. But for New York, that's really ambitious overall.
Usually speed and cost always comes hand in hand with a compromise. And I'm by no means an expert in prefabs, but where would you sort of stack yourselves against other traditional builds in terms of sort of durability? And well, sort of if I am to be in one of these, will I hear my neighbor showering? I don't know, just try to understand. So how do you compare in terms of quality and durability wise to traditional builds?
I would say if you go into more as a case in point, if you go into single family home construction or you go into more rural areas in America, people are already starting to switch to using cold form steel, which is the core structural technology we're using, from timber, because it's way more efficient across the board, better in terms of price comparisons, and super durable. It lasts, CFS. The CFS structure lasts for like up to 700 years or something like that. So actually the quality is really based on the manufacturing of the panels. We found a really great manufacturing partner that's very seasoned multifamily home builder. They really love what we're doing. And it's something where in the end, the quality is better than when you get from on-site construction. Because if you think about it, everything in prefab is done in the factory with, more accessible equipment in a controlled environment. A lot of standard construction in New York is still people pulling equipment onto site and cutting wood on site, or cutting materials on site or whatnot. So the end result is something that's less precise. I think the caveat for prefab is across the board, it's more precise, better quality. But the thing that has been the huge barrier is costs for New York. And just like the projects that have been realized there just haven't been very thorough in terms of the overall project planning, in terms of the other companies that are integrated in as a part of the process. And there's been a lot of issues. So there's been a lot of cautiousness about prefab, but a lot of interest in it too. And I think there's going to be an inflection point within the next 5 years in the US where prefabs are going to take off. It's already happening in China and in Japan and Europe. US is just really behind the curve in terms of prefab overall.
Is there IP involved? What's stopping any other prefab from doing something similar to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something we do have a provisional patent filed. It's a systems utility patent. In terms of the panel sizes and the connectors are the key thing that minimize the amount of screws and bolts that need to go in to put the panels together. Standard CFS construction, which is happening in New York right now, but that's largely done on site. That's like for a small structure that we're looking at 3 floors, that's 10,000 screws for one structure. So what we're doing is exponentially lowering the amount of fastening that needs to happen on site, which is why you need a smaller team in general to put things together on site as well.
Okay. What about in terms of sort of development? Where are you? Are you commercializing this? Are you still sort of prototyping phase? Where exactly are you?
We've gone through a series of mock-ups. We'll have a panel demo at Brooklyn Navy Yard. As I mentioned, we're negotiating with the landowner, or we have an agreement with the landowner we're formalizing the joint venture with them. We have like a full team ready to go in New York in terms of a general contractor, engineer, and architect of record for building submissions. We're basically ready to build something which will be the pilot project will be realized by the end of 2024, I think, if everything goes in accordance with what we're planning right now. So the technology is the core technology is there. There's a couple of things we still need to test out with the DOB related to prefab electrical and plumbing, because that's not something that's been done in New York so much. But for the core CFS structure, no issues with that at all. We're just following standard guidelines the DOB has in place. Our default for plumbing, if we can get the prefab plumbing approved by the DOB, is just to do standard on-site installation for the plumbing and electrical. So that'll slow things down a bit, but still not a huge issue for what we're doing. I think it's worst case scenario for DOB if we need to go through a whole process of approvals with a department within the DOB for prefab, that can be 1 year to 2 years. But for the core of what we're doing right now, we have a workaround or a contingency plan, so we can do things while we're doing that in parallel.
Okay, clear. Matt, I guess
the other thing I wanted to add in, I don't know if this is going to make sense to you all. The other thing for building construction, multifamily construction, is the foundation, and the go-to for a lot of prefab is a concrete slab. There's a lot of issues with the amount of time. It's like anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 months to do the concrete slab pour. There's actually something used in New York which we're integrating to what we're doing, modifying slightly, but it's a prefab foundation construction tech. It involves helical pilings, which are basically like corkscrews that go into the ground, and precast concrete beams that the building sits on top of. So that gives you a window of about 20 days for the whole prefab construction versus 6 months. So it's another thing that's a huge part of what we're doing. And the great thing is we're using precast concrete beams, is they're easy to take out and reuse in other buildings, on other projects post the building's life cycle or whatnot.
If you've got the technology, did you ever think about going the licensing or franchising model and trying to get other builders on board to use your systems to build this out? Why build it all and sell it all yourself and have to run everything?
That's a great question. That's something we're exploring with someone in Southeast Asia right now. I think for the New York market, we want to get a pilot project built, and that's something we're interested in the future at looking at. But I think from our perspective, our goal is to just really focus on one market and make sure there's a market we can scale in, which New York definitely is. I think if we do like a successful pilot project build in New York and are able to scale there, then it just opens up a lot more willingness for people in other markets to license what we're doing, or license our tech, or to work with us in other markets. But we're also being very mindful about not doing too much at once, especially given how real estate development works. It's like, really complicated ecology or ecosystem overall. So we just really want to nail New York first. And, everyone globally knows New York. So if we can do things there, everyone knows it's really difficult to build there. If we can successfully scale there, then it's really easy to go to Chicago, San Francisco, Miami. Also, we've been talking with on and off with Obayashi and Takanaka, two big construction companies in Japan. They're really interested in what we're doing, but they need to see some things built first, more or less.
Speaking of big ecosystem and changes in general, so we had COVID and everyone realized we're not going back to the office all the time. These office buildings are being used like 40% of the time. What does that do on the potential demand for your business and multi-home if and when governments and cities and building owners start to realize leaving their buildings empty a lot of the time doesn't make sense and starting to use that for housing, which they should be doing?
Yeah, there's already some of that conversion already happening. I think that the thing undergirding everything is the price points. When you look at renovations, which I've done a fair amount as an architect as well in the past, they can be more expensive than new buildings are. And it really comes down to what the price points are and, what the returns are. I think there are conversions happening. I do think that, renovating buildings is its own challenge in the end as well, just in terms of you have to work through the city to get approval for changes of zoning to the building from like office to residential, for example. It's also a very complicated, ecosystem to navigate through. I would say even within New York, if they converted all the, vacant office spaces into residential, they still have a housing shortage. Overall, there's just a huge demand and not enough supply right now. Say like globally right now, housing is especially affordable housing is a huge issue. The good thing about what we're doing for New York too is with Habitat is that's for the affordable housing market. And our price points are coming in at they're not insanely low, but with tax rebates and everything else we're doing, they're competitive with standard construction. And it makes us a viable player for the affordable housing market too.
What about the software bit? Is that itself not sort of a business and monetizable?
Yeah, it is, but that's like I think it's something we were just talking with another VC out of based in Texas about. I think what we've been developing is like a turnkey solution for both software and hardware, which is to say, what we're developing works with our system, with our panelization system. If we start to move into more general sort of can be any building configuration, then there's a lot of other competitors in that market, or that are entering that market. For what we're doing for multifamily, there's basically not very many companies doing what we're doing right now. If we were to jump into the software market, there's it's a whole different structure in terms of customer support, in terms of licensing, all of that. And I think, while the amount of capital investment for the software is less, or for a SaaS model is less than what we're doing, if we can make what we're doing work, the return is way better. And just, I think our goal for New York is to really, if we do 150 builds in 5 years, that'll be unprecedented for New York. And it's a really good ROI for the initial investment. We're like talking about over 50 million return on an investment, or more depending on the scale of the buildings. But I would say for us, we've put so much sweat into the hardware side of things, coupled with the software side of things, is something that we really want to push. We're definitely very inspired by the IKEA model as well. They're selling complete projects that are easily assemblable, and that utilize really efficient logistics, and storage, etc. We that's the route we started on, and that's the one that makes the most sense to us financially and to our investors already that have backed us.
What type of investors are you looking for? Is this a VC play, or is this a debt or a PE play?
Right now we're looking for equity investment in the company. There's kind of a split in terms of how we're looking at doing projects. So the projects, the financing for that will be per project, and that's not investment in the company, and that's investment in the project with a return after 18 months. Equity investment in the company is to help us to scale our team, and to continue to improve the connector technology, working with the prototyping partner, and we have a version 1.0 right now. We know we can make improvements to that in terms of how the panels connect together, and we plan to continually iterate on what we're doing. So we're always if we're doing well, other people are going to jump into the market, of course, and compete with us. I think our goal is to always try and stay one step ahead. And I would say the other thing is to develop a real identity in New York, meaning that people look at us and at ipHaus, and they're like, this is a real product that's scalable, that has traction within the market, that has a real identity behind, behind the technology and the design, and in the culture of the company, or what it is. Did that answer your question, or does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So Adam Newman comes to you in 2 or 3 months with 200 million of all that money he pulled down to buy this and build his little dream house empire. What do you say?
Depends on what the terms are, and I don't know. I'll cross that bridge when it if we come to it. I think right now we're very excited about working with real estate developers, and working with not-for-profits like Habitat, and really being able to engage with the city. I think through New Lab, we've had a series of meetings with the VP from Bank of America. They really love what we're doing. Setting up a meeting with, we have a meeting with NYC EDC soon, and we really love that whole process of really diving into the market, really understanding the players within the market, and setting up really robust networks for delivery or whatnot.
Spoken like a true CEO.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm transitioning from architect to CEO, and I don't know if you all know anything about architects, but they're usually pretty bad at business. So
yeah.
No. But thankfully, the other two partners, one is really well, really experienced in real estate development, and the other partner's a nanoscientist who's really well versed in things like solar power and new materials and all of that. He's been really helping too with the financial organization side of things. He's really good at that as well.
Awesome. Yao, any last questions?
No, super interesting, Andrew. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, if you all know of, like, we're really trying to get an additional 200,000 in to match the New York Ventures pledge. So it put us at $500,000, which would be half of our goal of $1 million. So if you know of any people that would be interested in what we're doing, we can give good terms for that, in terms of the valuation. Yeah, great time to invest in what we're doing, because it's a really good time to be doing what we're doing in New York, just given the focus of the city on affordable housing, and the networks we've been able to build there.